In part one of DraftNasty.com presents Spotlight Bobby Bowden, Call to Coach, reflections on more than just life and faith. We learned a lot about what he felt of his departure at FSU.
I'm planning on coming back this year. I want to come back. I didn't want one more year because everything was set up.
Some of those plans, why he wanted to come back just one more year, his close calls with death, so much more to explore of the legendary Bobby Bowden.
And going back to your childhood, one of the things that struck me in the book was the fact that you went through rheumatic fever, and you were diagnosed with that, I believe, at the age of 13.
13, yeah.
And how tough was that, going through that in the early stages of your life, particularly when you were trying to be an athlete?
Well, it was tough because I was 13 years of age, but I played all the time. You know, I played baseball, played basketball, played football. As youngsters coming up, you know how little leagues, and then all of a sudden couldn't play anymore, man. All of a sudden my knees started hurting and my joints started hurting, and so my doctor put me in bed, man. I mean, he wouldn't even let me get. I couldn't even sit up. I remember the first time he came by to see me. That was back in those days. They made house calls.
Right.
I mean, you didn't go to the doctor; they came to see you. And he came in my house. He had already diagnosed me with rheumatic fever. And I was laying there in the bed. When he came in, I started to get up. He said, "No, lay down, lay down." Well, I said, "My goodness, I'm about to die." And so, but it's a heart thing, and they didn't want any strain on the heart. Well, yeah, I stayed that way for about 6 months.
Your faith is an important part of your life.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that going through so much early on as a child helped establish that foundation?
I really do. I really do. I think it's something everybody needs. Everybody needs to go through some adversity. Now, it could be rheumatic fever. It could be sickness. It could be an accident. It could be something that you didn't want to have happened. Mm-hmm. Because you cannot judge a man's character until he's been through some tough times. If you've never been through some tough times, who knows what kind of character you got? You've never been tested, you know what? So I felt like I got tested early. And I had plenty of time to think, plenty of time to read, plenty of time to talk to good people, you know? And so, yeah, that year probably set the tone for my life.
Wow, I mean, that's kind of powerful when you think about being able to come back from that, when you talk about adversity.
Yeah. When the war came, they dropped football like everybody else. Then they started it back in '49. That was my first year. So I go there in '49 and stayed there for 4 years. And it was a battle. We were underdogs most of the time we were playing. And my last year I think we finally had a winning year, you know. And then from there they told me, said, "Look, if you'll go get your master's degree, we'll hire you back here as an assistant coach." So I went to Nashville to Peabody, which was a teacher's college.
I know about Peabody.
Do you really?
I went to Vanderbilt.
That's right, you were at Vanderbilt.
Yes, sir.
Now Peabody's part of Vanderbilt.
And you almost actually you applied for a coaching job at Vanderbilt in Tulane at one point, if I'm not mistaken.
I really did. I sure did. They had an opening there, and I applied for it. And so then I eventually came back to Samford University to coach. Coached there 4 years. My son Terry Bowden followed me 25 years later.
Yeah.
He coached there, you know. But and so as I was there, I think I applied for the Vanderbilt job and some other jobs, but I couldn't get. They didn't want a small college coach. So Ann and I felt like we had to get into a big college to make that move. You know what? So eventually I got an offer from Florida State to come down as an assistant. So I went there. I was an assistant.
The Marshall plane crash.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, this is very powerful in your life.
Oh yeah.
How that affected you 200 miles down the road, Marshall, from you coaching there, and you got West Virginia off to a pretty good start there. You had some decent success that season. That when you actually almost could have been on the plane crash because you almost got the Marshall job.
Oh, no doubt about it. I could have had it. All I had to do is say yes. When Marshall job came open, I think it was 69-8, because the crash was what, 69? The crash was
69 or 70. I think 70, I believe.
Okay, all right, 2 years before that it came open. All right, they offered me the job. The athletic director was Eddie Barrett, a good friend of mine, and he came up and interviewed me at our house there in Morgantown. And so I thought about it a while. I said, I think I can get a bigger job. You know what? Because Marshall was a smaller job. And so I turned it down. So the guy took the job. And 2 years later, crashed into that mountain, boy, and killed a lot of people I knew very well.
One of the things that wasn't really touched upon in your book that I found, again, powerful, was that you actually offered at one point to have the West Virginia team put on the Marshall jerseys and play the final game of that season to represent Marshall. What made you come up with that idea? Obviously, it was declined, but I thought that was a powerful message you were sending.
Well, actually, this became the connection with Marshall. Red Dawson played tight end for me at Florida State. I coached the receivers. Back then, you coached tight ends and wideouts at Bolitnikoff. And so Red was my tight end. Okay, then he left there, went into pro ball for a couple of years, and then he was an assistant coach at Marshall. And when the plane flew from North Carolina back to Huntington, he decided to drive back and recruit. So his life.
Move by you to allow Fisher to say, okay, you got to be the coach in waiting, but yet maybe not reciprocated on the other end. And I mean, obviously, you're not harboring those sentiments right now.
Well, they did that. I had nothing to do with you.
I mean, because I was going to ask you, why would you agree to those terms? Because it seemed like a peculiar situation to me.
Well, because I could feel my power slipping away 2 and 3 years even before that. I could tell they were asking other people for questions instead of me. You know, I could feel it slipping away. And so they came to me and said, we want to we'll name a coach in waiting. And so Jimbo's the logical guy, and so I went along with it, and poor Jimbo got caught right in the middle of it, you know, and I don't blame him at all. But they said they had it set up where he'd get $5 million in 2011. Okay, that gives me 1 more year. That's all I want. And I told him I don't want to stay for 1 more year. I'm 80. I don't want to stay for 1 more year. And I kind of patterned my life after.
Well, you say you were patterning your life kind of like Joe Turner.
I figured my career would be like Joe. I mean, Joe's a little bit older than I am and everything, and he had you know, he had couple of losing seasons, and they tried to get him to resign. He wouldn't. Say, I'm not going to do it. And say, well, I thought I'd be the same way. They ain't gonna. They're surely not going to let me go. But I didn't have, my options were not good, you know.
But you had a legitimate chance to win 400 games. You ended with 389, which I think bested your idol, by the way.
Yeah, that's
so you got to feel good about that. they can't take that away from you, coach.
That's right, exactly.
But I tell you, I just find it interesting because, I mean, some of the guys that you did get in place there, like Christian Ponder and some of those guys, that they were really special players, at least to me in my estimation, or have a chance to be. And so, and the way that, the 2 biggest games of the year to me were West Virginia, a team that you had a lot of association with, that had to be of special meaning to you, and then the North Carolina game. Because that game to me was kind of like saying, we're going to put our foot down, and they rallied behind you.
That's right, exactly. Game. Yeah. Those are our 2 big wins that year, you know. But anyway, they decided to go ahead. I didn't think they would, but they did, and I'm okay now. You know, it's not like I'm not bitter. I was disappointed. I was disappointed they would do that. You know,
quite obviously.
Because some of the trustees called me and said, "Look, we didn't feel that way." I was told they all felt like that way, but some of them called and said, "No, we didn't feel that way." So some of them did, some didn't. It's like anything else. I've seen it happen to so many other guys. You know, that I've seen it happen to other coaches, and things don't always end the way you want them to. But to think that I'm sitting back bitter and unhappy, no, I'm as happy as I've ever been. You know, I'm enjoying doing what
But you had a plan, and you just, I think maybe that's kind of...
just end of the year, you know, it's like I only wanted 1 more year, not to continue coaching, you know. And so, but anyway, it didn't work out that way, and again, I don't want people to feel like, to me, Jimbo got caught right in the middle of it, you know.
It's so incredible.